It was difficult. A 2-day stops only for gas, restroom, and fast food trip home after what was supposed to be a 2-week update. It was late. We arrived home, and there was practically no edible food in the house. Got up early for work and stopped at a local bakery to pick up a couple of my favorite donuts and coffee on the way. The entire office was surprised by my very early return. Didn't have time for a good lunch, so I ate a pack of cheese crackers and drank a soda at my desk. I met with my boss and was chastised for someone else's mistake. Home in time to see my wife, Lori, driving away down the street driving a rental truck. Her destination was unknown to me. I grabbed a protein bar from the refrigerator we took on our bad trip. The food we put there when we left was still untouched. The ice and coolants had melted, and everything was warm. The protein bar was soaked in water from the melted ice and was inedible. In the living room, most of the things she had before our marriage were gone. I went to the bedroom. Her children's dresser and closet were also gone. None of her belongings were left, and her closet was empty. There were 3 dirty coffee cups on the kitchen island. The family dishes and crystal were gone. This didn't surprise me. The purpose of the trip was to try to resolve some problems that had arisen in our 2-year marriage. To be honest, we had one big problem, but that was the biggest one. To change or not to change, that was the question. My vote was for not changing. One of the songs the DJ played at our wedding said that we got married in a fever, and that pretty much summed us up. We only knew each other for 6 months before we got married. Can you imagine how many people told both of us that it was a huge mistake to get married so quickly? The short answer is practically everyone I knew or was associated with. It was the same with her, but we didn't listen because we were in love and knew better than all of them combined. God, what idiots we were. The fever that was discussed in the song at the reception ended quite soon after the priest declared us husband and wife. The remains of the wedding cake didn't even have time to dry when problems began. They started with her new boss's son, who was raised to believe he was entitled to whatever he wanted. His father bought the car dealership where my wife worked. There were 6 car dealerships in our small town, and after Martin Justin Jour bought the one where Lori worked, he owned 3 of them. Lori had worked there for 4 years and was instrumental in getting my cousin, Jeffrey, hired to wash cars there. Everyone who knew Jeff loved and trusted him. He's not the smartest or fastest guy in the world, but he liked the job of washing cars and was good at it. He's also a decent mechanic, but never had the confidence to pursue it full-time. He was one of my witnesses at the wedding, and in addition to being my cousin, I considered him a good friend. After buying the dealership, Justin's son didn't show up there at first, but he later started hanging out there, and the office, where the mostly female employees worked, became his favorite place to hang out. Less than a week later, Lori's desk became the center of his universe while he was at the dealership. At first he was, according to Lori, annoying. Then she stopped mentioning him, and I assumed he had either stopped bothering her or had moved on to someone else. Jeff was more silent than usual one evening as we sat on the porch of the house Lori and I rented. He loved beer, but didn't tolerate alcohol well, so I always kept non-alcoholic beer for him. If he ever noticed a difference, he didn't say anything. Don't think anything bad, he's not stupid. He just has a hard time getting things quickly, but damn, once he learns something, anything, he'll never forget it, and he's fiercely loyal to his friends, and especially to me. So we sat on the porch. He said little and barely touched his drink. I often noticed the way he looked at me. Okay, Jeff, what happened? Roger likes Lori. Roger was Justin's son. I laughed. Everyone likes Lori. Lori likes Roger. No, I do not like it. Tim, I'm not that slow. He spends a lot of time talking to her. Today they went to lunch together and came back at the same time. Lori never left for lunch. She always ate in the break room and watched television shows. You are sure? He nodded slowly. This was the first sign that there was trouble in paradise. We didn't talk about it any more that evening. When she came home, I asked her if everything was okay at work and if she had any problems. It's okay. Why do you ask? No reason. Roger used to be annoying, and you haven't mentioned him in a while. Oh, he's still annoying, but I can handle it." The second, third, and fourth signs followed one after another, all coming from Jeff: inappropriate touching, such as his hand on her buttocks, or her hand on his leg while they were sitting close to each other. All sorts of things, but nothing that would directly indicate betrayal. I didn't like what I was hearing, but I also didn't say anything to Lori. I just told Jeff to keep an eye on them and tell me what he sees. Those times when he saw something inappropriate, he called me. I was usually quite aggressive and confrontational, but I tolerated it for several reasons. First of all, I really didn't want to think about the possibility that she might have done something bad, like cheating. But I also didn't want to hear all the "I told you so" that I would get from everyone I knew if she cheated. One afternoon, he called to tell me that Lori and Roger were kissing in his father's office. Kissing was crossing the line. I talked to her about it this evening. She initially denied everything, but eventually admitted that they played a little and kissed, but nothing serious happened. Is something serious going to happen? I asked. Of course not, was her answer. I made it clear that I would no longer tolerate games and kisses, and that cheating would definitely lead to divorce. We can get divorced as quickly as we got married, and I won't hesitate if you ever sleep with someone else. Although I never told her how I found out about her and Roger, Jeff was fired the next day. It wasn't hard to guess why. Lori and I never discussed firing him, but I did mention how despicable it is to fire someone with a disability. I also said that Jeff and I would file a complaint against Justin with the disability organization. No one ever thought Jeff was disabled, just slow, and the mention of filing a complaint was just my outburst of emotion. Jeff and I never discussed anything like this. The next day, Jeff was rehired to work at one of the other two car dealerships owned by Martin Justin Jor, but the employees at his original place of employment were so outraged that he was returned to his original position. It was an interesting experience in the field of human relations. Almost everyone at the dealership came to Jeff's defense. After our conversation and my statement that divorce could be obtained quickly, Lori and I had a lot of discussions about how married people should behave. Foremost among these behaviors was that you should never put yourself in a situation that your spouse does not approve of. For example, dining alone with a non-family member of the opposite sex may be completely innocent, but his appearance may cause rumors, especially in a small town. Once rumors start, they can no longer be controlled, and a good reputation can quickly deteriorate. After this conversation, we reflected and decided to take a break and try to bring back a little of the magic, a little of the fever that was talked about in the song at our wedding. We planned the trip, took some time off, packed up and went. We traveled there for 2 full days. The first few hours of the trip were pleasant enough, but then we hadn't even driven 4 hours when her phone rang. She looked at him but didn't answer. She turned off the call. Less than an hour later, she received another call. She was holding the phone in her hand and it was vibrating. She felt the initial vibration and jumped nervously. She looked but didn't respond, but after a few minutes, she asked to stop to go to the toilet. We stopped at a large gas station. I drove up to the pump and she jumped out and went inside. I usually don't like careless drivers who fill up their car and then leave it at the pump while they go to the store or to the toilet. This usually means other drivers have to wait to fill up. Things would be easier if people parked their car after gassing up before going inside, but damn, those are just my complaints. This time I was that thoughtless person. As she hurried inside, I followed her. She didn't look back and was on the phone as soon as she crossed the threshold. I said I'd call when I could. There was a pause. Damn, Roger, I'm serious. I'll call you when I get back. Another pause. Roger, don't. She looked at her phone, then looked around. I lowered myself behind the long shelf of snacks and waited a few seconds before looking up to see if she had left. Her back was towards me when I heard her speak. Damn it, don't ever hang up on me again. Apparently he did hang up because she looked back at her apparently dead phone. This time she didn't even bother looking back. She just tried to call him, but he didn't answer. She was looking at her phone when I walked over and stood in front of her. Everything is fine, I asked. Oh yes, everything is fine. She looked at me. I need to go to the toilet, she said, running away. I returned to the car and filled it up. She came out carrying a soda. I looked at her. Okay, I'll take mine, I said, heading inside. She looked as if she didn't understand at all that it would be nice to at least ask if I wanted anything from the store. As I was leaving the store with my soda, I saw her talking on the phone again. She ended the call as soon as I opened the door to get into the car. I didn't say anything as I started the car and drove on. We spent that night in a motel. We ordered pizza from our room and went to bed before 10. We drove for most of the next day talking little. We checked into the hotel, had dinner at the hotel restaurant, and went to bed. I was still wide awake, staring into the darkness a little after 11 when I saw her phone screen light up. No sound, only light. She jumped up and ran to the bathroom with the phone. I slowly got up and stood next to the closed bathroom door, trying to hear but couldn't make it out. "Please don't" were the only 2 words I understood. The conversation continued for a couple of minutes while I stood there trying to understand what she was saying, but I couldn't. I was still standing there when she opened the door. She screamed. I scared her. "Damn, what are you doing here?" she asked when she realized who it was. "Just wondering what you're doing there." I pointed to the bathroom. "Nothing. Just using the toilet. Do you need a phone for this?" Yeah, I used his light to make sure I didn't hit anything while coming here. She tried to walk past me. "You forgot to wash it off." "Oh yeah, she came back and washed it off." "Who were you talking to?" "What, who are you talking to? With no one." "Why, I knew she was lying and she knew I knew it. I'm going to bed. In the morning, tell me who you talked to and what, or we'll go home. We came on this trip to try to figure it out. But it takes both of us. Keeping secrets doesn't help if that's our plan." I went to bed, where I finally fell asleep just before dawn. She was sitting on the sofa in the room when I woke up about an hour after I went to bed. I sat down, put a couple of pillows behind me, and looked at her. She looked at me. It was Roger. What was that about? He wants me to sleep with him. I thought before answering. Again, I asked. She hesitated before nodding. It was a shot in the dark on my part. I had no reason to believe that they had already slept together. I was honestly stunned by her confession. "How many times have you slept with him already?" "2. Why?" "I'm not sure. I think the first time was curiosity. And second, he said if I didn't agree, he'd tell you. And he threatens it again. Yes, I knew what my answer would be. I never let her know that cheating would be okay. On the contrary, I told her in clear terms what would happen if she did, and expected the same from her if I cheated. You know, this is the end of our marriage, right?" Tears appeared in her eyes as she nodded again. I got up and went to the bathroom. Regardless of what's going on around you, when you feel the urge to go to the toilet, you go to the toilet. After I relieved myself and washed my hands, brushed my teeth, washed my face, I put my toothbrush and toothpaste back in the toiletry bag and opened the door. "I'm going home. You can come with me or wait for him to come get you." Packing took only a few minutes, and we left the room. I checked out of the hotel, and we got into the car and started the long stops only for gas, restroom, and fast food drive mentioned earlier. The trip should have given her the opportunity to apologize, ask for forgiveness, or beg for a second chance. But she did none of those things. In fact, we didn't talk at all the entire time. When we stopped, she would buy her food and I would buy mine. If she needed to go to the toilet, she never mentioned it. When we stopped, she was always the first one to get back into the car. At home, my first day of work was over. The house had been cleared of all of Laurie's things, and I hadn't eaten well in days. We've never used the only food delivery service in town, but I decided now was the time to start. I went to their website, registered, and ordered food. 40 minutes after ordering, the delivery guy rang my doorbell. I picked up my food, tipped the driver in addition to what I had added to my order total, and began enjoying it with a glass, or 2 or 6 of wine. I put the food on the TV tray and sat down to eat. From my chair, I could see both the TV and the street in front of the house. There was a car parked on the street with someone in the driver's seat. As I ate, my attention switched from the TV to the car where the driver was still sitting. I had almost finished my meal, but the driver still hadn't moved. I took a sip of wine and went outside. The driver saw me and rolled down the window. It was my food delivery girl, and she was in tears. "Are you okay?" I asked. "No, my car won't start, and no one can help me." I didn't pay attention to her or her car when she first arrived because my thoughts were elsewhere. Everyone I know is busy or not answering, and my brother won't be able to come for another hour. Another thing I didn't notice was a child in the back seat. She sat with a book on her lap and looked like she wanted to cry too. "Would you like me to see what's wrong with her?" "Oh God, please." She opened her door and moved over. I got behind the wheel and turned the key. Just clicks, then nothing. I tried again. This time there was no clicking. Just nothing. I'm no mechanic, but I think I know when the battery is dead. I brought my car and tried to start her car using jumper wires, but no luck. All this was beyond my understanding. "Look, why don't you come over to my place while I call my cousin to take a look at this?" They reluctantly followed me. "Make yourself comfortable while I call him." Jeff arrived 15 minutes later, and within 30 minutes her car was running. She thanked me, talked to Jeff, hugged him, and left. The next 2 days at work were terrible. I didn't tell anyone about Lori, and my boss was hanging on me like a dog on a bone, and I was tired of it. My personal life was in shambles, and I was expected to perform miracles on a project with marginal profits. I decided it was time to have a heart-to-heart talk with him. "I'm tired of your attacks. I told you from the very beginning that this project is doomed. I hate ultimatums, but you either stop putting pressure on me and let me see what I can make of it, or you can give it to someone else, or you can kiss my ass and I'll leave. Your choice. I'm going home. Call me when you decide." I was pretty sure that he would give me a couple of days to cool down and then call me and ask me to come back to work. Plus, I needed to find a lawyer and start the divorce process. That evening, I called Jeff to see if he wanted to drink, although drinks with him usually included wine or beer for me and non-alcoholic beer for him. I can't. I have a date. He dated when we were both in high school, and when I was in college, he would sometimes call me to talk about his rare dates and ask for advice. If he ever got lucky, I haven't heard about it, but he's not the type to brag about it, even to me. Besides being a little slow, he was also terribly shy, and strangers made him nervous. Well, that's great. Who is this lucky girl? Jenny. Jenny who? Courier girl. Which courier? The one at your house with the broken car. Are you serious? Yes. What a smooth tongue you have. Mister, how did this happen? When I fixed her car, I told her if she needed any more help to call me. So she did. And you helped her again. He laughed like a child. Helped? So where are you going? Nowhere. Like nowhere. No. I'm going to her house. She's making me dinner. I laughed, happy for him, but did not miss the opportunity to make fun of him. You know she's vegan, right? What is this? That means she only eats plants. No meat, no eggs, no dairy. Jeff was a true meat and potatoes guy. A couple of restaurants nearby had a promotion if you eat a huge steak, which is more like a roast, along with salad, vegetables, and dessert. It's free. He did it. He was sick for 2 days, but he did it. No meat, even no hamburgers. What am I going to eat? Well, there'll be a lot of salad, maybe some beans. And if you're lucky, quinoa, 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 quinoa. It's a seed that's used in a lot of vegan dishes. It used to be fed to animals many years ago in the Lake Titicaca region of South America before people started eating it. Tit what? I'm not hungry anymore. I laughed into the phone. I'm kidding, Jeff. I don't know what she's eating, but whatever it is, I'm sure it'll be delicious. Go and have fun. I decided to use the food delivery service again for my dinner. The next day, I was pottering around the house. Lori left, and I had a year left on my lease, so I decided to make it convenient for myself. I also figured my boss would call and apologize and ask me to come back to work. By noon he had not called, but his wife did. "Tim, I'm tired of hearing your dad complain about how you ruin everything. You have a degree. Why don't you get a job somewhere else if you don't get along with him? I'm thinking about it, Mom, but you know I'll have to move. That's the only thing that bothers me about this. Why don't you just do what he wants? Because he does everything the old way. We need to modernize. Did you explain this to him? Many times, but he's too stubborn to listen. I don't want you to leave, so talk to him again. Okay, I promise he'll calm down and call me tomorrow. I'm sure. I'm looking straight at him. Just go back to work tomorrow. He nods. That's fine. Now, why don't you and Lori come over for dinner tomorrow? Ah, I'd love to, Mom, but she won't be there. Why? I've been putting it off, but I decided it was time to tell. I started telling her, and she started telling it to her dad until he told her to put it on speaker. When I finished, he picked up the phone. Here's what we'll do. I'll fire you so you'll have no income and you won't pay her child support. You'll go back to work after the divorce. I told you she wasn't the one for you, and she's proven it. You're better off without her, my mother added. Thanks to both of you, but I can handle it. See you in the office, Dad. Mom, see you tomorrow for dinner. I spent a lot of time the next day trying to explain why and how I thought the changes would help the company. But my father was more interested in Lori and told me, I told you so. After work, my mom and I would have dinner and I would have to retell the story about Lori and hear his. I told you so again, and my mom would add her 2 cents. When I returned home later, Lori was on the porch. This was the first time I had seen her since our failed trip. I could see her in the porch light. I drove into the garage and entered the house from that side. The doorbell rang as I walked to the light switch by the front door, turned off the porch light, and then went to take a shower. When I finished, she was no longer there. Finding a lawyer was easy. Finding someone willing to handle a divorce involving Roger Justin was a little more difficult, but I managed. Of course, I'll take the case. His old man sold me a real lemon, and he never fixed it, and so the paperwork began. Meetings, sessions with Lori and her lawyer. I never spoke to her directly during the entire process, and other than a visit to the house that evening where I ignored her. She showed no interest in talking, and I didn't want to talk either. She cheated, so as far as I was concerned, talking was useless. According to Jeff, Lori was transferred to one of the other car dealerships, and Roger rarely showed up. The rumors at the water cooler were that Roger had dumped her and moved on to someone more worthy of him. Meanwhile, Jeff and Jenny got along great, and Jenny's daughter thought he was wonderful. He divided his free time between her house and mine, and was happier than I had ever seen him. The more he talked about his relationship with Jenny, the more I realized that I was jealous of him. I walked home from work with occasional trips to the lawyer's office, the store, or my parents' house. Dad got his fill of, I told you so, and even made a couple of attempts to understand my ideas for improving the company. My mom kept finding me girls, and I kept turning down dates. Our city is relatively small, and I had no idea how many single, eligible girls there were until she found them. I think she posted an ad, attractive, college-educated 28-year-old man going through a divorce looking for the right girl. Must be honest, loyal, and reliable. Appearance is secondary to her personality. Must love music, theater, good wines, and good food. I stopped answering the phone after the 5th date. She set up and told my dad that the first time he mentioned the arrangement of my love life, I would go to Houston. I first spoke with Lori the day our divorce was made official. The judge slammed his gavel, declared our marriage over, and I walked up to her. Was it worth it? I turned and left without waiting for an answer. Jeff used to wash my car, but stopped because he was too busy cleaning Jenny's car, so I washed my car myself one Saturday. He pulled into the driveway with Jenny and her daughter, Sophie. Sophie was about 7 or 8 years old. They were going to the mall and asked if I wanted to join. I threw the sponge into a bucket of water, dried my hands and said, "Let's go." When I'm so bored that I go for a walk in the mall, just to have something to do. That means I've hit rock bottom, but that's what I did. We were there for about an hour, and I started to regret my decision to join when we passed an ice cream stand, and Sophie asked to buy her some. "Not now, honey," Jenny said. "Too close to dinner." "Screw this," I said. "Come on, soft. I want it to." She grabbed my hand and ran. See you later. I called over my shoulder. We licked the ice cream and walked holding hands. We need to hold hands, Sophie said. My mom told me that she doesn't want to get lost when there are a lot of people around us, so I have to hold her hand. I don't want you to get lost, so I have to hold your hand too. That's a good idea. We walked for a few minutes, and when she wasn't licking the ice cream, she was chatting. Suddenly, I felt myself being thrown to the ground and lost consciousness when my head hit the floor. When I came to, I was handcuffed, surrounded by police officers and an angry crowd. I looked and Sophie was crying, holding on to the woman. Damn it. Just shut up, we'll get to you soon. It's okay, Sophie, I heard the woman say. He can't hurt you anymore. He didn't hurt me. He bought me ice cream. I know, baby, bad people do that sometimes. He's not a bad person, Aunt Louise. Where's my mother? I called her. She'll be there soon. Is Tim hurt? Who is Tim? She said, pointing at me. Every time I tried to speak, the policeman told me to shut up. Do you know him? Yes. This is Jeff's cousin. We went shopping. Oh my God, said Aunt Louise. Then to one of the policemen, I think I was mistaken. God, woman, don't tell me that. He looked at the crowd. We better get him out of here before this mob tears him apart. He grabbed my hand. Let's go. Some of the crowd followed us to security. I heard terrible proposals for reprisals against me. I felt scared, and every time I tried to say something, one of the police officers told me to keep quiet and that I would have a chance to talk later. They put me in a room, searched me, turned out my pockets, and I was still handcuffed. Finally, 2 policemen came in, uncuffed me, returned my wallet, watched and other things, and began to apologize. Jenny and Jeff also entered. Oh God, Tim, I'm so sorry, Jenny said. My sister saw you with Sophie, didn't know who you were, and thought you were kidnapping her. I rubbed my wrists. I saw people on TV and handcuffs, and when they were taken off, they rubbed their wrists. I never knew why, but now I understand. These damn things hurt. I was furious, shocked, still a little scared and nervous. Jeff kept asking me if everything was okay. Jenny kept apologizing, and Sophie was clinging to Jenny like she was alive. I looked at one of the officers. Am I free? Yes, sir. But before you leave, we would like you to sign a waiver form. You just threw me to the ground, knocked me out, cuffed me, and called me names. I will not sign any waiver form until I speak with my attorney. I left this room into a large room. One of the mall security guards stood at the door. Is this a way out? Yes, sir, but I wouldn't go out if I were you. Why? Because there are some people outside who think you are a criminal, and they are waiting for you. Jesus Christ, could this day be any worse? Can't you tell them the truth? We tried. We'll take you out the back door. Mr. Jeffries said the police sergeant, he or someone else, apparently looked through my wallet and learned my name. Take him to my car, Jeff said. The sergeant looked at me. Why don't you let us take you home? We'll use my car. It is not marked. Went. It's not that I was angry or upset with Jeff or Jenny or even Aunt Louise. I just wanted to get out of there, and it seemed to me that the fastest and safest way was with a police escort. We were at the back door when Aunt Louise stopped me. I am so sorry. I saw you with Sophie and thought you were kidnapping her. I took a deep breath. I understand, but I was beaten, knocked out, and a lot of people there. I pointed to the door of the main office. Want reprisals. I don't think you should talk to me right now. Then to the sergeant, take me home. After I gave him my address, we were silent until we arrived at my house. My phone rang at least 6 times, but I ignored it. I didn't want to talk to anyone. At home, I was about to get out of his car, and he stopped me. Mr. Jeffries, I'm sorry you found yourself in this situation, but from my point of view, I prefer it to happen this way, rather than for a young girl to be kidnapped because someone saw something but didn't say anything. I will always side with good Samaritans like Louise Garner. I understand and agree with you from your position, but tonight the news will most likely show my name and photo. Since it was a mistake, it shouldn't have been reported at all, but it's sensational, so they will. Journalists can't help themselves. The news will say it was a mistake and everything is fine, but half the people who see it won't believe that part of the story and I'll be marked for life. Thanks for the ride home. Maybe it won't be so bad. I'll see what I can do. Yes, but pigs can fly. I thought to myself, I got into my car and drove straight to my parents' house. In the evening, we watched the local news, and there it was. The news was already on when we turned on the TV and found the right channel. We missed the first part of the story, but what we heard was, if you see something, speak up, even if it turns out to be a mistake. By saying nothing, you could be dooming an innocent child to an incredible fate. The good thing for me was that they never said my name or showed my photo. The commentator even ended the story with the words, "We decided not to name the gentleman so that his life would not be turned upside down even more than it was this afternoon. Personally, sincere apologies from me. This is Louise Garner. Good night." "Well, you dodged a bullet," my father said. "Not as bad as you thought." "No, it's not that bad. What are you going to do now?" asked my mother. "Probably forget about it." If I tried to sue for wrongful arrest, it would come out, and my name and photo would definitely be all over the place. I don't want this, and the police did what they considered necessary at that moment. On the way home, I remembered my phone. By that time, there were already 8 messages on it. 3 from Jeff apologizing for what happened and how Jenny is feeling about it. The remaining calls were from city police and a local TV station. I didn't listen to any of them. Later, I remembered how the TV presenter ended the program. "This is Louise Garner. Good night, damn it. What did the police sergeant tell me? I will always side with good Samaritans like Louise Garner." Well, to hell with it. I didn't look much at her at the mall, so I didn't recognize her from TV. Perhaps the makeup made her unrecognizable. I called Jeff because I knew he would be worried about me. "Are you okay?" he asked. "I am fine, still a little shocked." "How's Sophie? She is all right." "She got scared when the cops jumped on you and she dropped her ice cream. She calmed down after we bought her more and she realized you were okay." "I'm glad she's okay. Did you see the news?" "Most." "We missed the start. Damn, that was the best part." "Why?" Louise started by saying what happened and that she started this whole situation. She said she saw her niece walking with a strange man and just panicked. She followed you while she was on the phone with the police. She didn't trust the mall security, so she stayed behind you and kept the police informed of your location until they arrived. She took full responsibility for what happened and said that under the same circumstances she would have done the same. I guess I understand that. She was afraid that you would leave with Sophie before the police arrived. So when she followed you, she was looking for objects with which she could hit you. She's really sorry. Why didn't you tell me earlier that Jenny's sister works in television? I didn't think it was important. It probably doesn't matter. I got the impression the night Jenny dropped off the food at my house that she well needed money. But if her sister is a TV presenter, then she cannot be completely poor. This is local television, so Louise doesn't earn much. I don't know how much, but I know it's not much, and Jenny is like most of us, probably. She gets by, but she doesn't have a lot of extra money. If she needs something, she must find money. She's saving up for her vacation. So she has a second job delivering food. Well done, she. Yes, he fell silent. I like her, Tim, and she likes me too. She doesn't care that I'm slow. I smiled. None of your friends care that you're slow, Jeff. And we don't care what others think. Things returned to normal for the next few days, and the incident at the mall was never spoken of again. I didn't see Jenny or Sophie, but Jeff and I talked every couple of days. As usual, it was a different Saturday morning. I was eating a late breakfast of biscuits and gravy when the doorbell rang. I opened the door and Louise Garner was standing there. "Good morning. You're busy?" she asked. "No, actually. I just applied ointment to my wrists to ease the pain from the handcuffs. Tim, if I can call you that, I'm very sorry." "Oh, that's normal. Now that I was in handcuffs, all my friends in the neighborhood treat me with more respect. Maybe I should leave?" No, come in. I just talked to my parole officer." She looked at me sadly. "I can only apologize so many times. I'm sorry to trouble you." She turned to leave. "Wait," I said. There was no reason to be rude. She stopped. "I'm still in pain. I'll get through this. Well, when you get over it, call me." She handed me a business card. "I owe you lunch at the very least. I don't know about lunch, but you didn't have breakfast." "Not really. Do you like biscuits with gravy? Sausage sauce? Yes, one of my favorites, she smiled. I opened the door wider and she entered. In the kitchen, I handed her a plate and pointed to the stove where there were biscuits and sauce. Would you like me to heat up the sauce? I asked. I can do it if you don't mind, she said. Please, coffee? Yes, please. Do you want to add something to it? This may seem strange, but do you have chocolate milk instead of coffee? Ah, no, into him. Yes, she answered shyly. I know this sounds weird, but she was only the second person I knew who put chocolate milk in her coffee. I was different. Only in recent years have I replaced it with Bailey's. Did Jeff tell you this? What? Chocolate milk and coffee? No. Why, I'm the only person I know who does this, or rather did. Now it's you two. Are you sure Jeff didn't tell you? I've been adding chocolate milk to my coffee since I started drinking it. My whole family does it. Even Sophie, when Jenny lets her drink it. Well, I don't have chocolate milk, but I do have Bailey's. The morning passed quickly and pleasantly, and Louise became a fan of Bailey's in her coffee. This was the first breakfast we shared together, but it was far from the last. We started dating, and I became her most devoted TV viewer. Our first kiss was on our third date. Our first sex was 3 weeks after that, and it was my first time since my failed Rethink trip with Laurie, where the only thing I discovered was that she had cheated on me. Shortly after Jeff and Jenny became a couple, he decided he wanted more out of life and began working on cars full-time. Within 6 months, he had his own workshop and more work than he could handle. Jenny and Sophie were clearly good for him. I'm sure there's a scientific or psychological explanation for this, but it seemed like Jeff had become cleverer, faster, more attentive. I couldn't say exactly what had changed, but he was different and much more confident. Louise and I helped him when he moved in with Jenny. Sophie became his shadow and followed him everywhere. I saw them holding hands and told her that she was helping him not to get lost. No, we help each other not to get lost. I couldn't think of anything better she could have said about him. A year after the divorce, I learned that Laurie was going to marry again, but not to Roger Justin. She married some poor man who worked for the city sanitation. They knew each other for 5 months. It was on my mind to wish him luck. I assumed he would need it. I realized long before that I neither hate nor even disgusted her. It was our common mistake that we got married so quickly. Of course, the betrayal was entirely on her conscience. Life was good for almost 2 years. Jeff and Jenny were in the midst of preparations for their wedding. Louise was the bridesmaid and I was the best man. Their parents divorced when Louise, the youngest child in the family, was 4 years old. Their brother was supposed to walk Jenny down the aisle. The lease on my house was up, and I moved in with Louise. Marriage was never discussed, and we both seemed happy that even with Jeff and Jenny's wedding plans, we had no conversations about our own marriage. There is a publication that lists job openings at radio and television stations across the country. Unbeknownst to Louise, the producer of her news program had collected some of her old videos and sent them to much larger markets than our little area. He liked her job and wanted to help her advance. One day, she received a call from a television station in Houston. The news director saw some videos and asked for more. She was eventually invited to Houston for a conversation. She was delighted and we discussed it. It was a dream come true for her, so we decided that she should go there. After the interview, she told me that one of the videos that got the director interested in her was the one where she thought I was kidnapping Sophie. The conversation went well. She was offered a trial day of filming and was told that they would call, and they called. 2 weeks later, they offered her a job. The decision to take the job was obvious to her as it was to me. This was a huge step towards a possible national career, which of course every presenter strives for. My stubborn father finally agreed to do a couple of things my way, and the changes worked. Our business grew slowly but surely, and I loved helping it. He was happy. I was happy. Our employees were more than happy, and the financial results were very good. moving to Houston was not an option for me. Houston was a 4-hour drive away, but Louise and I decided we could handle the distance and maintain our relationship. And so it was. For 6 months, then the meetings and calls became less and less frequent. We couldn't watch it on our television because our cable provider didn't provide it. I could watch it on the internet and often did. She was only there for 3 months and moved from the news desk to a daily talk show, where she and her co-host talked to guests and the studio audience about all sorts of topics. They also attended virtually every charity event in their broadcast area. Pictures of them appeared in newspapers and websites from time to time, and she seemed to be having the time of her life. It's strange, but I felt good too. The challenge of a growing business was ideal for me, and I found myself spending less and less time looking at what Louise was doing. Of course, the downside was that I slept alone, at least me. I had no inkling that she slept with her insanely handsome co-host or anyone else, but with Lori in mind as the only experience. The thought never went too far. One Wednesday morning, I drove to Houston to surprise her. I told my dad I was taking the rest of the week off and going to see her. "Definitely this week?" he asked. "It's been a while since we've seen each other, and I think we need to talk." "I'd rather you wait, cannot." Immediately after our conversation, Jeff called and said he needed help that day and asked when I could come. "I'm going to Houston. I'll be back on Sunday. It will be too late." "What's so important that it can't wait?" I asked. "This is for Jenny." "Jeff, I'm sorry, but I can't. I'm going to Houston." Their show was live every morning. They spent their days doing research for the guests and making plans for the next day. It wasn't like they just came in, did an hour-long show and went home. They worked full-time. I arrived at her apartment a little after noon. I decided to wait for her there after discovering that my key no longer worked. I called the intercom, but there was no answer. I went to the building manager's office and asked for a new key. She knew me and greeted me warmly, but when I said what I wanted, "Sorry, but I can't do this." "Why? We have a new policy. Only the tenant can authorize keys or entry into the premises, and they must personally sign for the keys. But you know me." "Yes, sir. I know, but rules are rules. Can I ask a question?" "Certainly. Would it have changed anything if I was her husband?" "It would depend on who signed the lease. Only the tenant can authorize this period." I knew a brick wall when I saw one, so I left the office and walked across the parking lot to my car. Her reserved seat was empty. I called her from the car. She didn't answer, so I left a message for her to call me. She made it after just a few minutes. "Hi, honey," she said when I answered. "Hello, what's new?" "The same, how are you? I was thinking of coming for the weekend. It would be great. I have to finish the project we're working on by Friday." "Fine. What project?" "This is one of the charity events that our boss is involved in. We are developing a competition with a bunch of prizes for the biggest sponsors. It's fun, but it takes a lot of work." "Are you working on this today?" "No. I needed some rest, so I took today off." "And what are you doing?" "Just relaxing." "Great. Get some rest, and I'll see you on Friday." "Okay, darling. Take care of yourself. Love you. Bye." I tried to say I love you, but the words got stuck in my throat. I walked back through the garage, past her still empty parking space to the elevator, up to her floor, and rang the doorbells several times, waiting each time before giving up and leaving. For a moment, I hesitated between wanting to leave and continuing to wait. I even thought about calling her again and telling her where I was, but decided not to. She had already sorted out her priorities. The problem was that these weren't her beds that she might have been in, if she had been in a bed at all. I left. Returning home took some time. There were 2 cars on one side of the driveway and 2 more on the street. One was my parents' car, the other was Jeff's. I wasn't in the mood for company, and since they thought I'd be gone for the rest of the week, I wondered why they were even here. I pulled into the driveway and pressed the remote to open the garage. Louise's car was in the garage. I walked out and Jeff opened the kitchen door. He bowed from the waist and led me into the living room where my parents, Jenny, Sophie, Louise's mother and brother, and Louise herself stood. Louise stood in front of the fireplace, surrounded by the others. Jeff pushed me towards her. Everyone was smiling except Louise. She looked nervous. I walked up to her and she honestly got down on one knee. Tim, I love you. If you're going to kidnap someone, let it be me so we can live happily ever after. Will you marry me? She asked, holding a small box in front of me. The events of the day faded away when I opened the box and saw a gold ring with a diamond inside. She was still on one knee as I took the ring from the box and looked at it closer. I started to put it on my finger, but she stood up and stopped me. No, stupid. This is an engagement ring. You can't wear it until the wedding. That is, if the wedding even happens, because you haven't responded yet. I looked around at the faces in the room, then looked at her. Of course, why not? Everyone applauded. Romantic? Not at all. But I said it with a big smile while hugging her. You're such an idiot, she said after we kissed. Choose today to visit. You almost ruined everything. My father patted me on the back. We didn't know what to do. You insisted on going to Houston, and Louise was already on her way here. Even Jeff tried to stop you. We talked to her, and she said you'll probably be back tonight. So we moved on with things. What is so important that you insisted on going today? I looked at the people around. Honestly, yes. Everyone except Sophie and Louise said in unison. Louise spoke. Let me try to explain. She took a deep breath and took my hands. The last couple of months, I think we both felt like we were growing apart. Two separate lives and a life at a distance from each other. Both are happy at work and in life, but we feel that something is missing. I remembered my time in Houston and the parties, the fun, the people, everything I wanted from life. My job is perfect, but my life is incomplete. It is incomplete because I cannot share these wonderful moments with you. There were tears in her eyes as she continued. I knew that if I felt it, you should feel it too if you loved me. The desire to share with me all aspects of your life. Good moments in your business and joy when things go well. She felt silent. I'm right. All I could do was nod my head up and down. I love you, Tim, with all my heart. And I love you, I told her, and it was true. At that moment, the party began. Sophie, Jeff, and Jenny were the last to leave. Sophie wanted to hug me, so I picked her up. Does this mean you are my uncle now? She asked in a whisper. So I answered in a whisper. Fine. After they left, Louise and I sat on the sofa, each with a glass of wine, leaning back, relaxed, content to be in each other's company. Do you know another reason why I went to Houston today? She asked. I think yes. Why, you were worried that I was there alone and might be seeing another man. Have you met with another man? Yes, no. The only men I've ever had a real relationship with are my producer, my crew, and Thomas. Thomas was her co-host. I was most worried about Thomas. All those events you went to and your pictures in the newspapers. I was worried and jealous. She leaned over and kissed me. Oh, stupid. I could tell you that Thomas prefers men, and you have nothing to worry about, but that would be a lie. The truth is that he is the most selfish scoundrel I have ever met. He expects people, especially women, to be in the palm of his hand. We work well together, but personally, I don't like him, and he's indifferent to me. She took a sip of wine. My building manager helped. I was already on my way here when your father called and told me that you were going there. I called the manager and told him what was happening. She said she could handle it. She called me a few minutes later and said that the technical service was already changing the lock on my door. She guessed that if you could get into the apartment, you would stay and wait for me, no matter how long it took, and neither of us wanted that. I thought I knew you well enough to know how you would react if you thought I was doing something wrong, so I chose this path. I knew that if I gave you a reason, you wouldn't dwell on the details. Your experience with Laurie would have made you assume the worst and act accordingly. I'm sorry I misled you, but I knew it would make you come back here. Here, where I wanted to propose to you in front of your family. Do you forgive me? It wasn't difficult, of course, I forgive, and I'm sorry for my ridiculous reaction. I was shocked. She laughed. We all wanted you to be shocked. Well, I was. I leaned over and kissed her. I loved this woman, then took another sip of wine. What time are you leaving back for Houston? It was a 4-hour trip. and she usually left in the middle of the night. I forgot about her show earlier that day. Or will you go back tonight? I asked. I didn't want to waste time. I wanted to put her to bed. Soon? Well, she hesitated. Let's talk about it. The show today was taped on Monday. The shows for tomorrow and Friday were recorded yesterday. On Friday's show, it will be announced that this is my last day because I want to go home to my future husband. I sat looking at her. It's normal, isn't it? Of course, that's normal. This is even wonderful, but won't you miss it? Yes, but I miss you more, and I was hoping to convince my old station here to let me develop a show that would showcase local heroes, talent, events, and people. This should be enough until what? Before the baby is born. Then we'll see. I took a sip of wine. She sat watching me. Did you hear what I just said? I heard. I just didn't know Jenny was pregnant. She shook her head. Not her goose. Oh. I almost dropped my glass when I put it on the table and hugged her. Our life was wonderful. Louise returned to her old station and hosted the same type of show she did in Houston, just without a co-host. Our daughter, Danielle, was wonderful. My father's business and mine were thriving, and Sophie looked forward to walking with Danielle and holding her hand so she wouldn't get lost.